What's up, guys? Alex Armitage here, and today is a special day. It's my first time on YouTube. This is like my 46th take of this intro because I'm not used to being on this side of the camera. Yeah, not at all. The question I get asked the most is, Alex, how do I get into photography? What camera do I buy? What do I do to start learning some of these techniques or how to shoot better photos? And the answer is, well, there's a lot of ways you can go about it, but I think the best way is to learn with your phone. You can start right now. Literally right this second. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to go invest in anything. And the reason that is because most people have a cell phone and most people keep up to date with their cell phones within the last couple of years, which means that you can go take spectacular images with just your phone. Where do you start? How do you start taking better photos with your phone? How do you start taking photos with your phone at all? So that's what I want to go over today, is kind of learning what you do with your phone and how to get in photography using your phone. So let's go. Most of you are assuming that there's no way that your camera on your phone can take pictures like a $3,000 camera. The truth is, you're not entirely wrong. If my camera on my phone could take pictures like my $3,000, $4,000 camera, then those wouldn't exist. But the reality is, and the most important thing is, that there's a lot of similarities between the two, far more similarities than there are differences. And I want to prove that to you. So let's take a look. All right, so I wanted to show you this example because I took these with slightly updated cameras. One of these is taken with an iPhone 7 and another is taken with a 5D Mark IV. Can you guess which is which? I'll zoom in like I did on the other one, give you more details so you can really start to see which camera picked out which details. Now both of these are completely unedited, so I'll give you a second to decide which camera took which. The left photo is taken by the iPhone 7 and the right photo is taken by the Canon 5D Mark IV. Knowing that those are even close, like, that is mind-blowing. To think that 20 years ago I could have told you, hey, you're gonna have something that you carry around in your pocket that does everything. Also take photos that you can print on your wall that are as good as the photos that this camera that you're holding can take. I wouldn't have ever believed you. The biggest thing is knowing the limits of your phone. That actually applies to every piece of equipment you use. Could be an expensive camera, could be lighting equipment, could be your car. Knowing the limits of how you use that device will greatly improve the photos that you end up taking, or the lighting that you end up producing, or the audio you end up recording. The limits of your device will guide you and tell you how to take better photos. One of the biggest limitations with shooting photos on your phone is its camera's depth of field. Don't be scared, it's okay, it's just a term. All it really means is how much stuff is in focus. That's pretty simple. Is the whole picture in focus? Is one person in focus? And you can kind of actually use this, what we're filming right now, as an example. You can see that, well, I really hope so, that my face is in focus and everything behind me is not. So the reason that this is hard to do with your phone is because the sensor size is really small. And that just means that it's harder for it to have things that are out of focus and in focus because of the way sensor technology works. I'm gonna show you though that you can still do it with your phone. We'll really show you that if you get closer to your subject and really put it in front of your camera phone, you can really blur out that background. Now, it's gonna limit you because obviously you can't be far away from something and do it. But that's actually an advantage for some people. For example, people like me who shoot landscape photography. I want mostly everything in focus, so being able to shoot things out of focus or in focus or have shallow depth of field, I don't really care about. So the next limitation shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody, and that is your focal length. What focal length is just the ability to either zoom in or out depending on, what you're trying to take a photo of. For example, this particular lens right here has different focal lengths that I can zoom from 35 to 16. Just so everyone's aware, they are releasing phones now that have literally two cameras on the back to give you the option to have a wide shot or a slightly more narrow shot. There's also manufacturers out there that are making it where you can buy a case and adapt lenses to it. But for now, I just want to focus on what you have. Even I don't have either of those things. So let's talk about what you currently have. And that is just the lens that's on your phone. So knowing your limitations there are really important. Know that you can't walk out of your back door and start taking National Geographic pictures of bald eagles, or even your kid running around with the dog super close up. Or if you're at the zoo and you want to get that lion in the back left corner of the cage, It's just not going to happen. Sure, take the photo for the memory, but don't take the photo as if you were trying to shoot for photography. So when you go out to shoot and learn photography, know that limit of your phone. One of the questions I get asked a lot is, Alex, how do I take better pictures in the dark? And I'm like, you don't take pictures in the dark, it's dark. And that applies to even bigger cameras. Aside from a few that can almost shoot in the dark, which is crazy, you really have a lot of limitations when shooting outside at night or inside at night or anything like that. And the reason that is, specifically on your phone, is because the sensor is so tiny. And if you can imagine, only so much light can get through this tiny little sensor as compared to a sensor that might be this size on your normal camera. And that just means that the light that comes in is less because it's less surface area. Science, who knew? But you just have to know where that limit is. So if it's really dark and you're trying to take a photo with your phone, it might not come out, but that applies to all of the stuff we just talked about. And I think that's what's most important about knowing the limits of your phone or the camera on your phone, is that you can't just take a photo and make it look good. You have to think about the photo you're taking. You have to think about, hey, I'm trying to learn photography. I'm not just taking this photo for memory. I want to take this photo and make it look the best I possibly can. So if you are far away from your subject and dealing with focal length, or you want shallow depth of field and you can't really manipulate it, or it's too dark outside, maybe don't take that photo, or take that photo to learn from, but don't expect it to be, poster worthy or anything like that. You need to know the limits of the device you're taking things on. So you might be asking yourself, well, what are some tips I can use to take better photos when the conditions are right? And that's what we're going to talk about right now. The first tip in improving your photography on your phone is to turn on the grid. And the way you do that, I'll show you right now, is you open up your settings. This is obviously for Apple, but it works exactly the same for Android, I'm sure. You scroll down to your camera and you turn on your grid. And what that's going to do is, now that you open your camera, you're going to see there's a grid on your camera. And you might be asking, what is that grid? Well, I'll talk about that in a second, but I want to talk about what it's going to help you with. The first thing it's going to help you with is your horizon line. So if you're shooting outside in nature, pretty much anywhere, one of the biggest mistakes I see beginning photographers make is their horizon line just isn't straight. So line that bad boy up. It's way easier to do in taking the photo, and you can always change it just a little bit in post, but why not get it right when you take the photo originally? The second thing it's going to do is help you with symmetry. Now, I know this example isn't very fun. It's pretty boring, if anything, but you can at least see that I'm using the grid here to line up the bottom of the bench and then have every side be symmetrical and really, fill up the frame with exactly what I want. And that can be applied to the stuff you're shooting. Is if you're shooting something that's symmetrical, like a staircase, a spiral staircase, anything, you can really fill up the frame with the exact portions that you want. And the last thing it's going to do is it's going to intrinsically teach you the rule of thirds, which is this mysterious rule in photography and art and all of that stuff that I don't want to go in depth about, especially in this video. I definitely want to do it in another video. But for now, I just want to keep it simple, and I want you to use that grid and put your subjects on those intersecting lines. You'll start to learn what photos look better than the other ones almost naturally, rather than me trying to explain something to you. And the best part about the rule of thirds, or just using these grids, is you can always break it. Feel free to take whatever photo you want, but it's there in case you need it. And I think it really helps remind you that when you take the camera app out of your phone, hey, I'm not just taking a photo here that is for memory, I'm taking a photo to learn something, to teach me how to shoot photography. And the grid really helps with that. Is you'll start to notice it. You'll be like, oh, I remember not to put the horizon line crooked or anything like that. So try that out and definitely let me know how that goes. All right, so the second tip I have is shooting from different angles. And this actually applies to all photography. It doesn't matter what you're doing, what you're using, is have a subject, have whatever you're taking a photo of, and move around. Sometimes just with a few steps, you can really change the outcome of what your photo looks like. And I have some examples of that are on the screen right now. They're kind of boring, but at least get the idea that I stepped a couple steps to the left or right and completely changed my composition. And that's really what you're looking for. Is I don't care what it is. Take a soda can and shoot it from one angle, and then move around and shoot it from another angle, and see what it looks like. See how it changes. See which one you like better. And what you'll end up doing is you're gonna naturally teach yourself composition that way. And I think that's one of the best ways to learn composition, is rather than reading it from a book or hearing it from my mouth, is just take photos and move around and take other photos and look at those and see which ones you like best. And that's the beauty behind learning composition in photography, is that it's a very natural thing. It's something that's supposed to be in your photos that you don't necessarily notice, it just seems right. And you only really notice it when it's bad composition, right? You only notice when you're like, something's wrong with this photo. But when it's right, you're just like, man, this photo's gorgeous because everything is in the correct place. And the way you learn about doing that is just move around your subject, just take multiple photos. I genuinely feel like this is a recommendation that not enough people say, is to go and review and edit your photos. I personally feel like photography is 50% taking the photo and 50% editing the photo. And I don't necessarily mean in this case that you need to do a bunch of editing to make it look, way better than it was before, but reviewing your photos is really important. I don't think it's emphasized enough. How do you know if you took a good photo? How do you know how to learn from your photos? By taking it and editing it, that's how you're gonna know. You're really gonna, when you sit down and edit a photo, you're gonna know, oh man, this is way too dark. Oh, I should have been closer to the subject. 3 steps to the left, this would have looked much better in my composition. And you're gonna really learn those things by going back and looking at your photos, like I mentioned before. The other thing you're really gonna learn is these keywords like shadows and highlights and sharpening and color temperature and what is tint. And who cares what they are? Just learn what they are by playing around in these apps on your phone. That's the beauty of a phone. You don't have to take a memory card and put it on your computer and upload them. It's like cheating, honestly. Like back in the day, you had to develop film and all of that, and now we can just take photos on our phone and start editing them immediately. All right, so my recommendations for some editing apps would be just things that you might already have, like Instagram. You can change some stuff around like shadows and highlights and exposure and all that just with Instagram. Another app I would suggest, I know it's on iPhone, I'm not sure if it's on Android, is an app called Aviary, I don't know, I'll link it below. Try one of those out, but don't just listen to me, branch out, find an app that you might like, find an app that does other cool stuff. It's about playing around and just seeing what you can discover with photography. All right, so the final tip I have is slightly advanced. So if you aren't there yet, don't worry. I just wanted to add this as a bonus tip kind of, and that is downloading an app that lets you shoot in RAW, but also control a lot of the settings in your camera, such as ISO, aperture, and shutter speed. And I know those words usually scare people, like, whoa, I don't know what those mean. And to be honest, you don't need to know what those mean yet. By downloading one of these apps, you can actually learn what some of those things are just by taking a few photos and control aperture. What happens when I move the aperture on my phone? What happens when I move the shutter speed? And just see what happens, play around, just like with editing. One of the ways you can learn is just open it up and start moving around. And if you don't want to use it, don't use it. But if you really have a goal of getting a bigger camera and shooting on manual or shooting professional shots, it's a great way to bridge the gap between your phone and buying a dedicated camera. So the apps I suggest you use if you want to dabble into more advanced topics is one, ProCam. It's definitely on iPhone. I'm not sure if it's on Android. It's like $5, but what it'll do is you can take raw photos on your iPhone, and you can also start messing around with ISO and aperture and shutter speed and white balance and all of that. And it might really teach you or help you learn what those terms mean before you ever dabble in anything more advanced, such as getting a DSLR or something like that. But it's a great way to start. And the second app is Lightroom, Lightroom. Just search Lightroom. I don't remember what they changed the name of it to recently. It's free, but then if you want to open up the more advanced techniques, I believe you have to have some kind of Creative Cloud account. I don't know if it's the full account or just Lightroom account or something like that, but that's also a great app and I use that all the time. I highly suggest both of those if you want to start dabbling into more advanced stuff. All right, guys, that's pretty much it. I hope you learned as much as I did. This is probably like my 140th take. Like the what is this, YouTube? This has definitely been a learning process being on this side of the camera. But go out, take your phone. Let me know how it goes. Comment, like, subscribe. Do the YouTube things if you want to. But I would actually really like to know, hey, I watched your video and this helped me take better photos, whether it was starting out or intermediate or anything. So let me know in the comment section below or message me on Instagram, whatever. Anyways, I'll see you on the next episode and have a good day.